Hello, horror fans, and welcome to another episode of Silver Screams. Tonight we are talking about the two finale episodes of Scream Queens, Dorkus and... what was the other one?
Finale.
The finale. I guess...
Did it have
another
a name?
I think it did, but I think another just good name for it would be Epilogue, because it's essentially an epilogue episode.
Which was weird.
I mean, logic pointed to it pretty early on, but what do we think of Hester being the Red Devil?
Duh.
It did seem kind of obvious, but it is funny that she didn't get her hands as dirty as we thought. Because she herself had a very, very low body count. Boone did most of the killing, and then surprisingly, Pete killed more people than she did.
Did Hester not,
She killed Pete, and presumably the pizza delivery guy as well.
Well, yeah.
But she only claimed responsibility for Pete. But
I'm trying to remember if there's anyone else where she said, yes, this one is me, or if we're supposed to assume that most of them are Boone.
most of them are Boone and Pete. Yeah, she has a very, very low body count, but at the same time is very much the mastermind behind this, even more so than Gigi was. Because she had a different agenda aside from revenge. Her agenda was more of getting the family that she never had, which, interesting.
Chanel, all I ever wanted was to be your sister.
Yeah. And again, it makes me wonder if, as the plan kept going on, if she actually genuinely would go back and forth between wanting to murder the Chanels and she didn't even claim responsibility for killing Gigi either. Which, it could have been her, it could have been Pete. It's hard to say. He didn't claim responsibility for killing Gigi, but neither did she. So
I would imagine that she did.
I think that if she did, it was because Boone died and that wasn't part of the plan. I don't know, you can take her episode, her entire episode epilogue is very interesting because it's hard to take her for anything at her word because it's from her point of view.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same way, Chanel being the quote-unquote main character of our show for so long was misleading because so much of the narration was Chanel. So, yeah, it's hard to kind of get a grasp on what she was just kind of rolling with, whether or not she was okay with Boone and Gigi being collateral damage, if that was all part of her master plan, or if now she just doesn't have anyone left besides her remaining Kappa sisters.
I feel like from what we saw of the flashbacks and just the way that Hester conducts herself, she didn't really seem to care too much about Gigi or about Boone. Especially if part of it was putting the family back together. This is unfulfilling. She was calling her brother a moron when she was 8, 10? So this, younger than that probably closer to 6. Anyway, small child already had no respect for her sibling. No love lost there, even though they're twins. And probably didn't have a heck of a lot of respect for Gigi either, because, she gets old enough to realize that
Gigi's bringing them up in a very particular, not okay way.
Yeah. Still goes along with it, but realizes that, not a good thing. And especially with the trying to get the family together that she didn't have, well, obviously she found her family wanting. So I would not have been surprised had it been her instead of Pete under the mask to kill Boone, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if she took out Gigi. Although I will say that taking out Gigi came did that come before or after the revelation of, by the way, you are the father? I'm trying to remember.
I think that it was the same episode, because Pete was the one that got the sample from Boone's hair.
That's right.
And compared it to Grace's dad, and it was at the Thanksgiving episode where they found out,
but the
Red Devil killers are your offspring.
But the other reason she could have done it was she thought she would be able to marry into the Radwell family. So there's that as well. I think I have this family, so I'm getting rid of this other one that's done nothing for me.
Chad never got his comeuppance.
No, he didn't.
That was interesting.
But Chad, I feel, was more dumb than malicious for a lot of it. A lot of it is seeing his family. You can see how he's been brought up to think a certain way. And part of it is he's just dumb as a sack of hammers. It's half thinking that the world is his and half not really realizing that it's not and there are consequences for things. So I don't feel like he had a lot of comeuppance coming. And I'm not
threatening to
surprised.
murder people.
No, that's true. I am a little
murder
sad.
them to death.
I am a little sad that didn't play out. Because I thought that would have been interesting.
Do we want to talk about, like, overall positives and negatives of this finale? Because there are some good things because I want to talk about this two-parter like it is a whole.
Yeah.
Because it was presented to everybody
as a whole
on, the same night, even though they are two very distinct episodes. As a whole, it's kind of tough when you're wrapping up a mystery because there's a lot of exposition, there's a lot of explaining to do. So it's very difficult to do that, but still make it engaging and to not be too convoluted, to not lose your audience. Like, this is like when doing a mystery and you're revealing who done it, you could easily make or break your entire story.
Yeah.
So I will say that even though it was very exposition heavy, seeing Pete tell the story, even though, like, just like Grace, any and all sympathy for him evaporates when you find out how many people he's killed, and for
just a few, I thought. It was either Roger or Dodger, and
I think
Boone.
But then he tried to kill Zayday. He came after her with dual axes. He would have killed Zayday.
That's right.
He was a monster. Which, again, unforgivable, especially from Grace's point of view. But I did like the way that they showed him in the Red Devil costume without the mask. Like, committing, so you know exactly which murders he perpetrated. I thought that was very interesting. How about you? Overall, like, what do you just talking about random points, what do you think worked, what do you think didn't? I
love Grace's reaction to him talking about this and him saying, oh, it's justified because of this, and him saying, oh, they have the right idea, and her going, no, don't you try to justify this. You killed a guy. You killed several guys. You were in cahoots with him, and it sounds like you agree with him, which is a problem.
And he's like, you're a hypocrite. You were going to poison the dean.
Like, yep, that's true, but I'm still not okay with this. Like, that whole thing was very interesting. I did love the conversation with Dad afterwards about I still loved him and I still cared about him, and he really pulled one over on me. Like, it's kind of odd in this very weird Ryan Murphy world where you sit there and go, yeah, it's only working this way because it's a Ryan Murphy world, which is one of the things that annoyed me about this finale. That they have these conversations that are actually rather poignant and quite good. They stand out. The conversation about consent and whether or not you should have sex, the previous episode, was really good. And then this one about he was a terrible person, but I still loved him, was also really good because these are things that happen and that a lot of people can relate to. So I was kind of surprised that we had that conversation and that it turned out as good as it did. And I have to wonder who wrote it.
That's a good... I'll be honest, I don't keep track of the individual writers for these episodes. So yeah, no, that was... Any moment, like, genuinely touching and not, like, creepy moments between Grace and her dad, because when he's stalking her around campus, that was real creepy and annoying.
Yeah, no. We spent a lot of time with Dad just being like... Ugh.
Just face palming. But anytime that he has, like, a genuine moment with her, it's very, very sweet and very well done.
It really is.
And it's also coming from the point of view of a man who's made a lot of mistakes in his life, who's been through quite a bit trying to be the best father he could be. And then the revelation that he wasn't there for two of his children and that they are the ones causing all of this death and destruction, who may very well end up killing his daughter. Like, that's a lot to take in from a guy who's trying to do his best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, again, finding out his ex-girlfriend was part of this whole thing, which
Again, how the hell did they find that out? Like, that I guess, watching the finale the way I did, it was in the middle of something else, and there were a few things that never quite clicked for me that may or may not have had answers.
Well, they found out about Gigi from the previous episode. That was Pete's investigation into the whole thing. About the sister, right, and that's how Gigi wanted to get revenge and also got custody of the kids. All that jazz.
All right. All that crazy. I mean, yeah, just
it's been a while since we reviewed the last episode. It's been a bit. So I also want to ask, like, in terms of spoilers, because I actually got spoiled for the fact that Pete died, and I was very happy that he died very early in the episode because I got spoiled for it on social media. I wasn't spoiled for anything else. Did you end up getting spoiled for anything? Lucky.
No, I don't follow Fox or Scream Queens or, like, a lot of the shows that I do, I don't actually follow the official Twitters, because if it's, we're probably not going to watch it the night it airs, it's like, nope.
I'm going to have to start unfollowing a lot of shows that I like. Scream, MTV, Scream Queens, because they live tweet with everybody.
I have that trouble with the Shield Twitter on occasion. It's like, I didn't get a chance to okay, I don't have any context for that
and it's
image.
really bad when you also follow a bunch of the cast members, too.
They retweet
because
everything.
they retweet stuff and they live tweet along with everything, too. So unless you just want to unfollow everybody, or you just do a total social media blackout, like, you're in a lot of trouble when it comes to, like, trying to figure everything out.
And Twitter's so open. I mean, on Tumblr, you can do Tumblr Savior, and you can block tags, essentially, and posts will show up on your dash that say, this was blocked because it had X on it. And you can choose whether or not to view it. It assumes that other people actually tag their stuff, but on Tumblr, you have that option. On Twitter, there is nothing like that.
No, there's not.
It's extremely free and open, and that has a lot of advantages.
And a lot of disadvantages.
And a lot of problems when it comes to remaining spoiler-free. We are recording this on Thursday the 17th, is that today? December 17th?
That is indeed today.
Star Wars comes into wide release tomorrow. There are
None of you spoil it for us.
There are a whole bunch of people who have already seen it, and so it's very much a conversation right now with everyone saying, just don't say anything. Just don't do it. People have waited 30 years for this. Do not spoil what happens next.
I know one guy who bought his ticket for 5:45 in the morning tomorrow. He's going to see it at 5:45 tomorrow morning. That's insane to me.
There's a theater showing it at 5:45?
There are theaters showing it at midnight.
What is it, the Alamo Draft House?
No, they're showing it at midnight, at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m. Like they're showing it in, like, 2-hour increments for a bunch of different theaters because people are lining up to see it. And guess what? No one wants to get spoiled.
And I did see a picture of someone who bought out literally an entire theater because he wanted him and his group to be the only people in it. $2,500 bought out an entire showing of one theater.
If I was eccentric and rich, I would totally do that because watching movies with my friends is one of my favorite things.
But I book a private screening instead of buying out a theater instead of buying out a public theater.
Yeah. If you're going to do that, like, buy out the Malibu Theater or something. That's like
that has
small.
18 seats in it.
They're nice seats, too.
They are nice seats.
They're very nice seats. But
we
anyway,
are super off topic.
We are. To get back to
social media spoilers, it's rough sometimes.
It is. But luckily, Pete getting killed is the only thing I got spoiled for. I do want to ask what you thought of the Melanie Dorkis red herring. Because
what a waste of screen time.
Yeah, like, it was... I did appreciate the series of references we got, and also, like, seeing Chanel... Probably my favorite, like, character-driven moment was Chanel and Zayday having this conversation. But, again, with Chanel, it's always one step forward, 2 steps back, because as soon as she has some sort of suspect or some other outlet for these feelings that she has, she's like, it's this person's fault, I need to kill them. Because that's the way it is. Because we have this character moment where she's reflecting, everybody gets access to these awful things that she said to her sorority sisters.
Because Hester essentially does a all universities email, and I remember getting in trouble for that as a student, and another, her being able to send an email just as anonymous, like, congratulations. It doesn't work that way.
Well, I mean, she's thought a lot of things through. She's probably smart enough to either create a secondary account or to hack into somebody else's.
It straight up said anonymous, though. You can't create your own account on an email server like a school's. They have people there who are... I work at a school.
It doesn't matter, Katie. It doesn't matter. She could have created a separate email, a private email on a completely different server, had her name as anonymous, just forwarded it to herself, and then just took all her contact information off of it. I'm just
Ryan Murphy
saying.
World. This is one of the biggest issues I had with the finale. This and the jury and the fact that a lot of it was just, this only works because of the backwards alternate universe logic of a Ryan Murphy world. And it just ticks me off. They try so hard to stay with the realism, aside from a few little things that are like, okay, that's weird. Okay, she's stunningly racist, but, Ryan Murphy world. And then they just throw it all to the wind and lean very, very heavily on the moon logic is the only logic that applies here.
And then just kind of throw up their hands and go, because it's funny!
It seems contrived. We wanted this to be the finale. This is how we go about it, regardless of any logic or how things would work. Again, I get it. Ryan Murphy world. But on the other hand, that's an excuse.
Well, and it seems like other wasted opportunities. I almost would have preferred if they had introduced Melanie Dorkis coming back into town a couple episodes ago. And that way she actually does seem a legitimate presence as a red herring, as a potential suspect. But here, it's just kind of a throw, and again, it's probably because it's lumped in with the finale and not aired on a separate week, but it feels like she's a character who, just had nothing to do with anything since the first episode, who got shoved into here, randomly, and then didn't affect the outcome in any way, shape, or form.
And it's not even a convincing red herring, because the audience knows from seeing those clips in the first episode that the Red Devil, whoever it was responsible for her being covered in acid. So there's no way that it could have been her.
Yeah.
That's a special flavor of crazy.
But had she been introduced a couple episodes earlier, then we could have introduced her as somebody having her own private vendetta, who could have pulled a Dean Munch, and or used this as an opportunity to try to get revenge on the people who wronged her, completely separate from what the actual Red Devil is doing.
So that would be amazing. And even just, Chanel also said that she checked the flights and she came back before before the murder started. So even if we had just had that mention of, oh, Dorkus is back in town, does anyone want to go see her? I didn't think so.
Or even, and granted, they very much say that she stays in her rooms, but even mentioning, that there's a new hag of Shady Lane, had she been seen, running around town with a veil or something like that, anything that could have established her as potentially being up to something, or having her fit into this plot in some way, shape, or form, would have been interesting, because the only thing she really did for the plot in this was provide the setup for a few pretty funny references to other horror movies. Freddy Krueger, Friday the 13th, and the Toxic Avenger got a nice little nod in there. But in terms of her actual significance, she could have been a very interesting player in this chess game, one that Hester and Gigi and Boone were completely unaware of. And again, that's when you have somebody like that, like the Dean, who has their own agenda, who comes into play and throws everybody for a loop, that's interesting. It changes things up, and it's very hard to navigate, even for the killers, to kind of figure out who's on what side and who's doing what.
But for Melanie, it was, we need another red herring, even though the audience won't ever buy it, and we're running out of bodies.
And also...
That was it. You're right, they absolutely needed to have more infrastructure on that before they decided to build it.
Yeah, which is a shame because it had a brilliant setup in the first episode. Like, if she had come back even in, like, episode 6 or 7... Like, it didn't, it wouldn't have had to be too early. It could have been the latter half of the season.
Even just mentions, she's back. We've seen her around town. Like, 1 or 2 lines of dialogue thrown in there on occasion would set enough of the scene for us to come back around and have this particular bit make more sense. Especially for having Chanel suspect her and then, you know, turning from an apology video into a documentary of murder, which is one of the dumbest things you could possibly do. Holy cow. Well, but even then, it's not just, oh, I saw that your flight came back. Oh, and I saw this. Oh, and this. And the audience is like, okay, this is super convenient. As opposed to, oh, yeah, they mentioned that in episode 1. Oh, yeah, there was someone running around in a veil in episode 4. Oh, yeah, there was this. Oh, yeah, she was in the crowd scene in the haunted house, wasn't she? Oh, yeah, there was that. Like, the little teeny building blocks they could have used to at least make this more believable, even if we would have known from day one that, no, the Red Devil did this to her. She's not one of them.
Well, and even, especially, too, because... the flashback scene of the day where she was attacked by the Red Devil is such a significant moment for so many characters. It's when Grace meets the Chanels for the first time. It's when Chanel number 1 has her turning point, and they have that moment where they just cross paths. It's the first time Hester and Boone conceivably are in the Kappa House since the night they were born. That flashback has a lot of significant moments in it. And again, to have this set up as just somebody who's just a red herring and not somebody who's a mover and a shaker in any way, shape, or form.
It's annoying.
It's not, for me, it's less annoying and it's more just kind of it's a wasted opportunity.
And at this point, like I said, what a waste of screen time. You could have done anything with that. And you did this. Like, again, the apology tour would have been a lot more interesting if it had been Chanel bringing Hester up and saying, oh, Hester, you know, I did... doing an apology to Hester. I'm sorry I pushed you down the stairs. I'm sorry I did this. You're one of my sisters now. I'm sorry for the email. Just stuff. And I wonder if it wasn't that email that also sent Hester over the edge from I want to be your sister to, screw it. I got a biological one over there in the corner.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of interesting, again, from Hester's point of view, when we have a one-on-one confrontation with her and the other killer in this series, the Dean, going like, I could have had a great life. Wes is a great guy. He could have been a great dad. And you can tell that even though she had a brother, she probably always did want a sister. And I don't know at what point in time she found out Grace was her sister and that Wes was her dad. Probably before this whole affair started and Gigi, because again, I think the whole reason Gigi wanted to date him in the first place was because she saw them as her children and Wes is their father. She's like, this is how I make my family complete, you know, because she was crazy.
I don't know. I don't know if she ever knew.
It might have just been the mixtapes.
I don't know that Gigi ever knew. I don't know that Boone ever knew. And I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, Hester got it, common knowledge, talking with Grace, whatever. I mean, after a point, if enough people know, or even if Pete told her, by the way, surprise, surprise.
I feel like they knew enough about the situation, at least the killers knew enough about the situation to know everything going in, with the exception of what other people who would jump into their scheme were going to do, like the Dean and Pete.
Again, I have a tough time believing that they would have known because the DNA test does require, you can't just run someone's DNA through a machine and say, oh, here's your family tree. Because then we would not have nearly the issue that we do with people who are adopted needing to know their medical histories.
They've had 20 years to research this. And, yeah, Gigi has, you know, all of Kappa's records at her disposal and all sorts of other interesting things. So it would not have surprised me in the least. But anyway.
Again, I seriously doubt it. Even in a world of Ryan Murphy contrivances, I seriously doubt it.
Point being. So we touched on the Dorkus episode. I do want to talk about the framing for this because they make it very clear when they're getting the info from the dean, that basically one student faked her transcripts, all this other stuff. Again, we just kind of shrug and we're like, it's Hester. It's for sure Hester. Wes and the dean ending up together. That was an interesting turn.
I feel like Wes is still 22 years old. Trapped in a, 30, 40-year-old body, give or take?
What, did he have his first set of kids when he was 18?
I mean, I don't remember. Didn't he get Grace's mom pregnant in college?
But I don't know what year he was. I don't know if that was when he was a senior or a junior or what.
Point being, he's in his late 30s, early 40s, but I think he had to grow up very quickly in some ways and just never did in others. Relationships, intimacy, etc. I think at that point he's still stuck as a 22-year-old. A 22-year-old frat boy who did a lot of that while drunk or stoned off his ass. So there's a lot that he doesn't know and doesn't understand, which is probably why he was okay with he just kind of rolled with Gigi buying the engagement ring and, I don't really want to disappoint her. And I'm like, dude,
that's not how normal relationships work, man.
For someone who has a really good understanding of consent and when you should and shouldn't have sex, there's a lot you don't get.
I mean, the only serious relationship he had, though, was with a horribly self-destructive person. So,
yeah.
I mean, again, not knowing how relationships work is something I can't really blame him for, but at the same time, it's still like, I'm
not surprised that he latched onto the dean after she basically opened a whole new world of sex to him. Exactly. You kind of latch on to people who do that, and the dean wanted him in the first place and was having that ridiculous catty jealousy thing with Gigi, so even if it's not a great or super healthy relationship, she's going to be like, yep, well, this one's mine.
That she
carry him around like a purse dog.
I love how smart she is because she's not a fool. And we knew that from the last episode that she could see through most subterfuge pretty well. And I love that she just saw through the whole point of this charade in the first place. It's just like, well, I'm sure there was enough time for, obtaining records. She just very offhandedly just said, yeah, that was the point of this. I know it's a distraction. But he's so enamored with, again, what's happened that he's like, no, I want to talk to you. Oh, my gosh. It's kind of funny and kind of cute, but at the same time, it's still really bizarre.
Everyone needs counseling, and not Ryan Murphy world counseling, but real world counseling.
But it's funny because when she says, hey, I'm going to drop some truth on you. If we're going to be a couple, we need some space from your daughter, which it sounds all menacing the way she says it, but she's absolutely correct.
She did say Grace needs to go bye-bye, which when people are being killed, you don't do that.
And when she's killed people.
Yeah.
She's right killed people and she's put people away for good.
Framed.
Yeah.
So she is right about them needing space from Grace, but the way she put it and the context and the timing was all just like...
Yeah, no, it was a really weird way to phrase it.
Very suspicious.
But I think it's very cute that they're just that just means that they're going to go on trips together. It's very sweet. Yeah, it's interesting. But I will say that I am very surprised that with Hester, again, they very much set up that she's being creepy alone in the Kappa House by herself, and then the next time we see her, she has a stiletto through her eye and pointing at Chanel number 5. I'm very, very, very surprised that everybody just took her explanation at her word. And granted, she had to convince Chanel number 5's parents to disown her.
It only just hit me that she probably set up that fake Tinder account.
Probably.
Hester, to lure Chanel number 5 back, knowing that number 5 was going so crazy trying to get someone to swipe left, right?
I don't know. I think you both have to swipe right. I think swiping left means like you're like boo.
Obviously, I don't use the apps.
I don't either. What is it that the kids are using these days?
I mean, I obviously know what it is, and at this point, what it's for. But I can't remember which direction.
I think you both have to swipe right.
Yeah.
There's a show. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say
Is there a show called Swipe Right?
No.
Because I know there's an episode called Turn Left, and that screwed me up, but good. Doctor Who fans, y'all should know that.
I think there might be a show about Tinder, but I may or may not be able to talk about that.
I would not be surprised.
No, I may or may not be able to talk about that. Anywho, anyway, that's irrelevant. But there's, anyway, so yeah, she clearly did that to make it seem like Chanel number 5 actually did perpetrate this crime, and that Chanel number 3 has a split personality who killed Sam, and, has been corroborating, and that Chanel number 1, gosh, what did she do for Chanel number 1?
I don't even remember.
I don't know. I don't remember either. But she threw them all under the bus.
Well, she probably brought up Miss B.
Yeah. And, yeah, I don't know. I would have to rewatch the episode.
I don't remember what she did for Chanel number 1 either, but at that point I was just kind of like, oh my God, this is so Ryan Murphy. And I know I keep saying that, but that is the point where we just leapt off the slippery slope of logic. And it was all set up because, the police are incompetent, and the new police are also incompetent and biased. And Hester has been just doing the dance puppets dance thing.
But I would have thought that Grace and Zayde at least had enough presence of mind. And at first they do. At first they're like, there's no way. But I would think that they would want more evidence than circumstantial evidence from, or seemingly concrete evidence from their previous primary suspect. And that she's now Sherlock Holmesing everybody into the most beneficial roles for her.
Yeah. But again, you've got the very biased police, and then, don't live in a town where police and investigative reporters are bad at their jobs.
Let's never, ever, 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 ever break up.
Although in this case, the police are brand new and still think Zayde's the killer, and the investigative reporter in all of this is dead. Yeah. And was one of the murderers.
Was one of the killers.
So, which, the Scream analogy doesn't quite fit.
More for, spoilers, for MTV's Scream, that, the Gale Weathers was the main perpetrator. So this is 2 slasher series in the same year where the investigative reporter was very much in on it. Interesting.
So yeah, I just, the way all of this played out, it was kind of like watching the How I Met Your Mother finale, and that once it hit a certain point, you're like, we have leapt off the slippery slope, and there is absolutely no coming back from this. But for How I Met Your Mother, it was just train wreck after horrendous, awful train wreck, and, forget that. And this one was just, it was the theater of the absurd after a point. You just kind of stop from the new recruitment class to Kappa House to what the memorial looks like and says to, committing these 3 girls to the asylum because they chose to represent themselves. And it's kind of the affluenza case writ large, but it doesn't really make a point aside from, oh, well, rich people are disconnected from society. Yeah, no.
We've been making that point all season.
We all know that. They've been making that point all season, and then it's not saying anything new to the audience. Like, no, we already knew that. Thank you.
No, the only thing it said was that Chanel is Chanel's own worst enemy.
Rich people are crazy.
Which,
okay, thank you.
For me, I'm disappointed by 2 different things. For one, I actually thought the finale was off to a good start, starting in the future and getting Hester's point of view. I actually did think that was very interesting.
But then I thought it was going to go into Hester getting caught. Or something. I thought we were going to have actual more future, whatever. Yeah, I thought more was going to take place in the present as opposed to, but here's how it really happened.
Because I'm not disappointed by Hester getting away with it. I'm disappointed in the way she got away with it. Like, I actually would have preferred if she had, because I know that the very last shot, like with the Red Devil attacking Chanel, that's just a big F you, in the same way that every scary movie nowadays feels like it has to end on a jump scare. And guess what, guys? No, they don't. No, they don't. Both The Babadook and It Follows, neither of them ended on jump scares, but most mainstream horror movies feel like they have to end on a jump scare for some reason, especially slashers, because they're like, oh, here is the main character getting attacked by the killer, and it's the last shot of the movie, and if we get a sequel, it was a dream. But if not, then they're dead. Whatever.
Yeah,
and
just
so
keeping the tradition established in Nightmare on Elm Street? Was that the first one that did it with the reach around?
It was there. A lot of them do that. Like, especially a lot from the 80s, because there's Carrie that ended on the dream jump scare. Friday the 13th ended on even Halloween didn't initially end on a jump scare, guys. Anyway, but that's
stop doing it.
Point being, stop doing it. Because I wouldn't have minded if she killed the Chanels, and I also wouldn't have minded if she did make it look like 2 or even all 3 of them were the Red Devils, and that they had all just turned on each other, and that she had killed them in a way
that would have been
that
amazing.
made it look like they all just turned on each other, and that way she still got her little epilogue, but we didn't have to do the stupid song and dance of, and I deduce, that sort of thing.
I just remembered that Pete went after Chanel with a crossbow. That was him.
Yeah, that was him. That was him 100%.
Bit of a problem.
Which,
but
again,
yeah,
it's...
No, I'm with you in that the Sherlocking is, again, where it leapt off the slippery slope of the absurd, and that was the point where it's just like, I have to write off everything that happens after this, because we are now into full-on Ryan Murphy absurd logic to make this finale work.
Don't get me wrong, I love a good murder mystery, and I love a good monologue wrapping up of, and the killer is, I love that stuff. But for me, for everything that the series had built up to, like, I like that in my murder mystery dinner theater stuff. For a slasher series like this, especially one that was going to let the killer get away with it, I expected a little bit more, and I expected something a little darker. And I love...
We could have used the extra screen time instead of having the whole Dorkus thing to build for that.
Yeah, and again, if she had made it look like, that they had all turned on each other, and again, it would have solidified her status as a victim and not as, like, amateur super sleuth, and she could have won some major brownie points, But
as a survivor. As one of these survivors.
As one of these survivors. And I will say that I actually did really love the conversation that she had with the dean. I thought that was one of the more poignant, really well done, well executed bits of this. And that scene alone, for me, actually did make the finale worthwhile. But especially with the nonchalant way that, oh, okay, take care, the way that it wrapped up. I thought that was very fitting with everything the show had to offer.
And with the reveal that the dean knew that she was the baby in the bathtub all along.
No,
I recognize you.
All along.
She let her into the school knowing that. And forced Kappa House to accept all applicants knowing that. Like, had the dean refused her entrance, had the dean been like, seriously, you gotta be kidding me, that would have been it. Or that would have been part of it.
Their scheme wouldn't have worked. They would have had to go about a completely different strategy.
At least Boone would have been in place. But like they said, the Dickie Dollar Scholars never went to class anyway, so he just kind of showed up and said he was one of them, and they went, oh, okay. But yeah, that was the one bit where you kind of established the dean as an enabling fool in that one, because she knew the whole dang time from day one that Hester was one of the babies in the bathtub, and still let her in and still enabled her joining Kappa House. Like, this will not end poorly. And then when all of the stuff with the Red Devil and all the murders happening, there's no way the dean couldn't have been like, you're the baby in the bathtub. You're one of them. That establishes this as the dean having known having known who she was the entire time, and probably having had the ability to stop it much sooner. It's a very jarring, out of character realization for the dean.
Not really. Not really, because she had known, we know that she knew, who the baby in the bathtub was this whole time. But we kind of had this sense that she's known for a good long while. Like when she's dropped, I think what she wanted was when she accepted Hester, it was initially just a very, on the surface of, I recognize you and you are a disabled student. This is beneficial to me, whatever. But then when things started happening, I think she was complicit because she did want to see Kappa House taken down.
But she was point where it started, where she had to close the university and it started tanking her career when she knew that Hester was one of the people attacking her, because all three of the Red Devils showed up at that point. There's a point where it becomes, you had the power to stop this, especially when it started being detrimental to you. Why would you not? What is wrong with you?
Again, I think, the depths that people are willing to go to see other people destroyed, especially the dean, she allowed herself to be cryogenically frozen. I'm pretty sure she didn't fear for her life because she can't be killed. She's pulling a Michael Myers, ironically enough. Laurie's pulling a Michael Myers in that she cannot be killed. So I think that she was fine with it as long as it was Kappa that was getting taken down. And then again, when she could even use it to her own personal vendetta, her own advantage, it was fine. But I think it was when more innocent people than she counted on, that, it was just it got just slightly out of hand. And I also think that the fact that there were multiple killers also threw her off.
I don't know.
And you have to also keep in mind that even though Hester was one of the babies in the bathtub, the fact that there were two Red Devils, even though that was a pretty early on revelation, that wasn't something that was apparent from the beginning. Yeah. She was one of the people that was buried in the sand when the first couple murders were committed and things like that. So she had solid alibis for stuff. So yeah, even if she suspected early on that she was responsible, there's no hard evidence. And then it's only later on when things start spiraling out of control and it's already too late to mention all this stuff in the first place. And again, it's another thing where she wouldn't have wanted to bring up the baby in the bathtub in the first place because of her role in that affair. That was the whole reason why she didn't want to reveal the baby in the bathtub in the first place. I will say that it probably just snowballed. Like, after a certain point, she's like, well, I wasn't going to say anything before, and now I can't say anything. And she kept dropping clues, and I think what she wanted was for Grace to put the pieces together. Because she knew that Grace was breaking into her office, getting records. She knew that she had dropped enough hints about the baby in the bathtub to Grace for Grace to be able to put two and two together. So I think what she wanted was for Grace to be the one to piece this puzzle together and to confront Hester and either bring her to justice or get killed so she could keep banging her dad. Either way, I think she wanted somebody else to play the White Knight and to clean it all up, or to just fail so that she could sweep it under the rug again.
Honestly, I feel like it wasn't thought that far ahead as far as the writers go. I feel like that was the sort of thing, we need this conversation to happen, let's do this, let's say that, and that all of the intricacies were not planned for, in the same way that Dorkus was dragged in the penultimate episode and ultimately wasted. I feel like it's one of those things where there are so many moving parts, and you don't sit down and write the whole thing at once, that it could have benefited from having all of the pieces on the board and then going, okay, this is iteration one. Here, problems here, and here, figure it out. And I know that's not how TV shows work, but I feel like that was to the detriment of this show. that you throw a line in there and it just screws up everything.
I will say that, mysteries are hard and puzzles are hard, and especially, murder mysteries, especially a slasher series that is not only trying to be funny, but also trying to pay homage to so many different horror genres. I will say that for the most part, like just talking about the series as a whole, I was very satisfied with this series, at least for season 1. What I would like them to do moving forward is I would like them to take a step back and look at what worked and what didn't work. And then for season 2, even though they're like planning on doing a season 2, I think I read an article that said it hadn't officially been picked up, but I'm confused by that because I'm pretty sure they were confirmed for season 2 like a while ago. But anyway, what I want them to do is, because they are going the anthology route, I want them to look at what worked and what didn't, take a step back, and apply that to the next season. Because, again, with anthology series can also be hit or miss, but I really like the thought and effort that went into this series, and I love the ideas and the intentions and the acting I thought were great. And so what I want them to do is to take this idea and run with it, and to keep running with it, and to get better and better as they go on and get more practice.
Yeah. I feel like the whole big, like you said, the Sherlocking bit was, I need to pull this together at the last minute. I recently did NaNoWriMo, and it's one of those things where it's like, I have hit a point in the plot where these things need to come together, and I don't have the infrastructure for it. Just do it. Just make it work. And then for Nano, you go back 3 months later and go, okay, how much of this do I need to take out with a weed whacker? But you don't really get that option.
You have to dig yourself out of that hole.
You gotta dig yourself down to China at that point. So I feel like there was a lot of that. There was a lot of too many moving pieces, too many things, and they didn't have... If this was their initial choice, if they're like, yeah, no, we're totally going to have Hester set up all these things and Sherlock like crazy and bring these things in randomly, then it's a poor choice. But it seems to me like, we need a way to fix this. We need a way to finish this. This is where it needs to end up. We're at X. We need to get to Z. What is Y? To help me figure out what Y is. And this was the best that they had in the time that they could do that worked with the pieces they had for Y. This was the only way they could get out of that corner. And it made Z unsatisfactory because Y was, to me, it seemed very thrown together, very, it has to work, and this is how it works. Instead, and I keep going back to the Ryan Murphy logic because that is one of the big things that separates this from movies and shows and whatnot that supposedly take place in the real world with the given exaggeration for television drama, etc. That usually the Ryan Murphy parts of it are they eat cotton balls and they still seem to be okay. And Chanel is horrifically racist, and for the most part people don't call her on it. They just kind of go, okay. And just stuff like that, where it's kind of the weird edges of the world that give it flavor, but it's never really the backbone of the story. And they take that and they make it the backbone of why, of Hester's thing of let's get to the finish. And that's when it starts feeling inauthentic, rushed, because they've taken something that's been a background element and they've made it a cornerstone, and it doesn't sit right.
For me,
we've gone full crazy.
For me, again, it doesn't live up to the potential that the series has. But I will say the thing I'm most disappointed at, since they didn't just, she didn't just kill the Chanels and again make it look like they killed each other.
That would have been so cool.
But I will say that since they kept Chanel alive until that last FU moment at the end, I will say I am still very disappointed that she never changed.
Yeah.
Because so much of this series has been focused on her as our pseudo-protagonist, she and Grace. And, so much of the show has been based around her narration and based around her one step forward, two steps back, growth and development, and her, learning lessons in a roundabout way or learning them the hard way or, all of those other things. Because when she did have moments of insight, when she got reconnected with her humanity, however briefly it lasted, when she stands up for her sisters, when she stands up for Kappa House, it is so endearing.
It's
because
like flipping a switch.
yeah. And it's when she does all these things, I want to root for her. I wanted to root for her. I wanted her to grow and change and develop and become a slightly better person, or at least less misguided. I wanted her to change. And I guess the lesson here is that you can't make people change.
It's a Ryan Murphy world.
But like I said,
don't get
if they weren't going to do that, then they should have just had Hester kill all of the Chanels and make it look like they turned on one another.
I mean, because what's the lesson of this? It's too much to try and change someone, so just shove them away from the rest of the world and, oh, look, they've kind of made it in their image, so they'll be relatively happy, and, oh, they don't feel pressured to be skinny for the boys anymore. They did eat in here because there's no...
Billie Lourd going full Princess Leia. She's Carrie Fisher's daughter, for those of you who don't know. That's the whole deal with the earmuffs. It's been like that's the show's inside joke the entire time. And now that we're at the season finale and she got her earmuffs taken away, she had to go full Princess Leia, which is pretty funny.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she's actually going to be playing Princess Leia, like young Princess Leia, I think in like future Star Wars related stuff. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's in the new movie or if that's just in like future projects down the line. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah.
I don't know. The whole thing with the asylum, it was kind of interesting. For one, the courtroom thing and the jury just changing it at the last minute was the most egregious Ryan Murphy logic thing for me. Like, you can't do that. Well, Once you're in, you're in.
You want to know what would have been funny, too? Like, a cruel irony is, like, again, doing away with 2 of the 3 of Chanel's and then leaving the one survivor in the asylum. And again, like, which is very fitting because it's the place where our killer was brought up. So, leaving her biggest tormentor and or her biggest rival in the form of Chanel #1 in the asylum where she came from, that is a cruel and bitter irony, and for her, probably a great justice. So, to me, they could have played this off in a way that was more effective, because they played it off very much for laughs, and to an extent, it's kind of funny. But how great would it have been if they just went full mean-spirited, dark, this is what you get, this is what you deserve, and now I have everything that you had.
I just, you put girls in the asylum and it's okay. You put rich people in the asylum and it's okay. I don't know. I understand it from a parallelism and from I'm missing words here as to what the actual term for this is.
It's called a cruel irony, much like my dependence on you.
Thank you. Bringing it back around and putting the Chanels in there. Like, I get the point of that. I understand that as a point of story structure, but again, the way that they wound up in there, and the judge sentencing the way he did, and the jury changing at the last minute, and just, again, making the Ryan Murphy absurdity the backbone of the way things are doing this, because we needed a way to put the Chanels in the asylum, and this is how to do it. Like, I don't know. I had problems with how a lot of it went down, because, again, a lot of this world was trying to be a little more, like, we went for the more absurd because the guy with both his arms cut off was lying in the street bleeding and somehow still survived and wasn't in the hospital. Like, at that point, you have no tourniquet. At that point, you're done. You bleed out. There's no way you don't. And I understand doing that for the absurdity and for the humor, and he didn't really wind up being a huge plot point of the show. It was just really interesting to see
and then
go down.
he got decapitated in a golf swing.
Oh, yeah. Probably Boone there.
Yeah. Oh, no, 100% Boone.
But just, again, making the absurdity the mover and shaker for these... I put way too much alcohol in this. God, I am done. Between the cold and the alcohol, I'm just like, words. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was, we need this to happen. We're doing a semi-theater of the absurd. We can rely on that. You're not doing a theater of the absurd. You're bordering on magical realism, if anything. And that needs to not be what's driving these decisions. You've taken the kid playing tree number 3 in the back row and made him the main character for 5-10 minutes. And it's just weird because what is tree number 3 doing up here? Making decisions. He's tree number 3 for a reason.
I feel like, I think, like, in terms of, like, whether or not, like, how much we both liked it, I feel like they could have stuck the landing better. But I still appreciate this series a lot for still doing the anthology thing, for still at least being able to tell a story with a beginning, middle, end, and not doing what MTV Scream did and saying, hey, you know that thing that we were going to wrap up? Guess what?
Never mind, we got a season 2.
You got to watch next season to figure it out. So
most of your people are dead.
I will say that even though a lot of it does feel... I don't think it's as slapped together as you feel it is, but I'm still unsatisfied with it, but I don't feel it's, like, thrown together just because. I feel like they had this plan for a good long while, and that this is just the way that it was executed. And again...
So it is like the How I Met Your Mother finale.
Let's not even talk about that. I'm not... No, there's not enough booze in the world to talk about that. Anyway, but I still feel like they could have stuck the landing a little bit better. But that being said, I still very much enjoyed this season, and I very much look forward to the next one.
Oh yeah, I really liked this show.
Are we out of minutes?
Than I think we are. So
Shoot. We might be out of minutes.
When did we run out of minutes?
I think a minute ago.
Shit.
Shall we wrap up? Well,
is it recording?
I don't know. So all in all, like I said, I think I'm more satisfied with the ending than you are. That being said, I still feel like it had a lot of potential that it could have lived up to that it didn't quite stick the landing. That being said, I still very much appreciate what the series was trying to do and what it was as a whole. And all in all, I enjoyed the ride a lot. And it was if nothing else, it was a beautiful set of homages that I very much appreciated.
I enjoyed the series. I feel like it's going to be one of those where when I watch it again, because I will probably wind up watching it again, which is not something I can say for Scream, the Scream series rather, that knowing what happens at the end might kind of have me going, yeah, okay, for a little bit of it, but I still did very much enjoy the series a lot more than I thought I was going to be honest.
Yeah, you weren't jazzed about the first couple episodes.
No, not at all. It's just certain things in the ending. I can appreciate what they were trying to do. I can appreciate where the story went, but certain decisions that were made to make the story go that way were just like, please.
Now,
come on.
Here's my question. And this is a question I want to pose to all of you guys, too. If you could pick any slasher or horror movie setting, it could even be supernatural, what would you want to be the next standalone season of Scream Queens?
Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Shut up and take my money!
Tell me you don't want a bunch of college students who are horrifically wrong genre savvy doing this. For those of you who are going, what the hell did those 3 words mean? Wrong genre savvy. It's a trope. There's genre savvy, which is when you are very much aware of the rules of the story that you're in, like Randy and Scream. And then there's wrong genre savvy, which is you believing that you're a certain character in a story, but you're actually this, but you think you're a hero, but you're the dumb jock that dies in the first 5 minutes. Or you think you're in a rom-com, but you're in a horror movie.
Or
something like that, where you think you know the rules, and you do know all the rules, but it doesn't apply to the situation you're in. So you're expecting something to come down the line according to the rules that you're functioning by, but you're functioning by the wrong set of rules. It's like trying to play football in a hockey game. you're wrong. You can be the best football player ever, but you're wrong.
You're in the wrong game, and you're probably going to slip on the ice.
And Tucker and Dale versus Evil has one of the best examples of wrong genre savvy that I have ever seen in media, and it is executed to the fullest, and it's beautiful. So I would watch a whole season of that, even if it included the crazy-ass Ryan Murphy absurdity.
And I gotta say that even, the flaws in the series aside, it's so nice to see something, even when people are, caricatures and stereotypes, it's so nice to see something so female-driven.
Oh, yeah.
To have so many female characters. Again, it's just nice. If we could get a little bit more diversity and a little less like comedic racism in the next season, that would be great.
Some of it wasn't even comedic. The black mammy stuff at the white mammy stuff at the beginning was just like
uncomfortable.
And I know it's meant to establish that Chanel's not a good person, disconnected, blah, 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 but dang, there are other ways to do it.
A lot of the diversity that was in this series was, as they said, established for cannon fodder. And
or cartoonish stereotypes, or...
as much fun as, like, Denise could be, she was also very much playing into a few different stereotypes.
And then no one remembers we could have had a deaf character, but it was just deaf Taylor Swift. Well, and we had a straight-up lesbian character, but that was her defining characteristic, as opposed to, here is a well-rounded character who happens to be lesbian.
She was a lesbian and she was Asian. And and again, I know it's a trope for minorities in horror movies to get killed. Like, so much so that it occasionally even trumps the virgin card. Like, there's an example in, I want to say it's Nightmare on Elm Street 5?
But then you're in, like, the 5th sequel, and at that point, you have no more rules.
Well, there was a girl who was black who had never even been kissed. And she's one of the first to go. It's like the minority card even trumps the virgin card. That's not fair. That's not fair, world. Anyway.
So yeah, I'm not sure how much. Again, white girl talking here. I'm not sure where the line is between. We had a diverse cast, and most of them were stereotypes for one thing or another, and we killed them off in relatively quick succession.
Point being is
And they were all known by deaf Taylor Swift, the lesbian, the this, the that.
Yeah.
Denise and Zayday were the only ones who were like, names.
And even Zayday, it took us a couple episodes to go... Because I think in one early recap, I called her Zendaya. I was like, is that her name? I don't know. Is that her name?
Well, and the only reason I remembered that Chanel was Chanel from the get-go was because there was a Chanel No. 4 joke. And I remember the Chanel No. 4 joke because it was hysterical to me. Well, I didn't remember Grace for the longest time either.
I know.
I'm just like bad at remembering people's names.
Character?
But again, it's...
Blonde girl with curly hair?
But it's also the point where the show itself was just calling her deaf Taylor Swift. And I know I keep coming back to that, but I honestly don't remember her name. Because that was just what they called her.
Yeah, I don't remember it either.
And it's kind of hard to remember Sam's name on occasion because it's just predatory les. And again, part of that is the hallmark of Chanel No. 1 naming people like that. And part of it's just like... that's what we came away with because that's what was reinforced so much. So I don't know how much is actual good representation and how much of it is just like, Ryan Murphy, stop it.
I think it's...
how much of it's Glee representation.
Yeah, I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B. The point being is I would like a little bit more representation in the next season. Again, a little less overt and unintentional racism. Because there's some that is genuinely unintentional, I think, in the form of accidental stereotypes, and then I think there's some where it's just like, this is funny and making a point, and it's like,
it's neither. It's neither.
Is it? But for me, in terms of setting, if they wanted to stick within the realm of semi-reality and avoid doing anything supernatural, I still would love the camp counselor setting. I think it'd be so great if they were doing like a girls' summer camp. And, like, our cast of characters returning because they're probably going to get a lot of the same actresses but playing different roles. I would love for them to be camp counselors. And I just think that'd be so much fun. Like, some people are really here and, like, enthusiastic to be here, and other people are there because it's their community service, and they're just there to put in their hours and things like that. I would love to see who plays what, and it would be so funny to see Emma Roberts go from playing Chanel to playing somebody super earnest and excited. Like, how great would that be?
If we're going to stay within the Greek system, I would love for it to be, like, a Panhellenic retreat or stuff like that, where you're getting ready for Rush, and so you have the people who are going to be the Rush coordinators, which means you have people from each different sorority on campus who have essentially taken off their letters for most of Rush to be able to help guide the new people, to be able to say, okay, well, what do you really want to be in? What are you looking for? Taking them from place to place. And basically, you're still in the Greek system, but you have given up your letters for a week or so to be a guide. And I would love to see murder go down at a Panhellenic conference. Or just when they're doing the retreat, trying to get ready for Rush. And it's, it's a big college, so they've got 20 different sororities, which means you have at least 2 reps from each. So you got 40 people there. You could do so much because there's, well, you're a this, well, you're a that. Well, we had this awful rivalry going at this charity event last year, or, well, you stole my boyfriend, or, well, you stole that recruit that I really wanted. It just,
there's a lot
really
of potential past drama going on.
Even if you just stay within the Greek system, you've got that, you've got a retreat where it's just the chapter, you have, I cannot remember the term for it to save my life, but when you have almost like a Founders Day meeting or a larger conference where it's many chapters of the same sorority in the same place. Because your chapters of sorority differ vastly between colleges and regions. So you could have all walks of life coming in and saying, oh, you're a Kappa too? Oh, you're a Kappa? Well, you really don't look like the Kappas at this university.
Wouldn't it be funny?
Yeah, that's because we're from here and we do this here.
It'd be funny if, like, one set of Kappas is like the Kappas from this school, and then you go to another set of Kappas, and they're extremely studious and, like, well-rounded and actually genuinely care about, like, giving back to the community and things like that. It would be funny. That
happens in real life between chapters.
I think that'd be fun, but personally, for me, because this is being an anthology series, I want the series to step away from the college set. Like, we can still have college characters, but I would want them to step away from campus and do something different in a new setting.
Well, we'll have to see what they do.
Yeah.
Because it's staying with the title of Scream Queen, so whatever we do is going to be very female-driven, but that may be the only...
That's probably going to... I mean, the way American Horror Story works, to my knowledge, is that each of these stories are all separate, but
they're all in the same
they
world.
exist in the same world, and even though you get the same cast members back to play different characters, that doesn't, like, they're not the characters from wherever they were first introduced. They're playing new characters, but that doesn't invalidate anything that happened in any of the other sets of stories.
Yeah.
So I would like for that to be the case, where it takes place in the same world. Like, we could even have, like, a newspaper somebody's reading about the Red Devil killings.
Yeah.
But I want a new set of scenery. I want a change of pace.
Okay.
Anyway, that basically wraps it. We talked so long. I'm so sorry.
There's a reason for that jump cut. We literally ran out of space on the camera.
Sorry. Womp womp. But
pretty great.
It was pretty great. I'm going to have to edit this together. It's going to be fun. Thank you guys for sticking with us for the entire season. Sorry that a lot of uploads have been so late after Buzz schedules and then, like, getting sick and then the holidays. It's just a spiral.
It's almost like we're busy human beings.
Who knew? Thank you guys for sticking with us. Thank you guys for all your comments and for giving your thoughts on the series too. It's always fun hearing what you guys have to say about the show and whether or not, I want to know, were you surprised when it was Hester? And where do you guys want to see season 2 go? any slasher setting, any horror movie setting, what do you guys want to see?
And what do you want us to talk about next?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a Gravity Falls series finale coming down the line sometime in January. Date still unknown as of the time of this recording. I don't know what else we got.
Again, there's plenty of Goosebumps episodes on Netflix, which we will be doing more of those. But that being said, yeah, I want to hear more from you guys in terms of movies and other TV shows. There's a lot of good stuff out there, guys. Just give us your suggestions. We want to hear from you. So yeah, thank you guys again. Katie, where can people go if they want to keep up with you?
You can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at Kiaxet. That's Kiaxet.
And I'm Megan. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TheMenguin. That's TheNenguin. And yeah, you can follow Silver Screams on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Silver_Screams. Yeah, be sure to comment. Again, we want to know what were your guys' thoughts on the finale world, because we clearly had lots of thoughts.
We had many thoughts.
Did you guys think they stuck the landing, or are you like us and you felt like it didn't live up to the potential? So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you all next time. Yeah.
Devil horns.
Devil horns? Is that what those are?
Devil horns.